and welcome to another episode of the Digital Access Show. In the last few weeks, we've been looking at a bit about WCAG, where it came from, a bit about more of the challenges that people with disability face, I should say. Actually, it's everyone faces, even down to hailing a bus, the challenges that people face. This week, I want to look at the legal aspects of the digital accessibility in Australia, because people say to me, oh, why should you do it? And if I immediately say, well, it's a legal requirement, they say, oh, you can't say that. And I think people have to realise it is a legal requirement. So our guest today is the wonderful Jeanette Jifkins from Onyx Legal. Hello, Jeanette.
Hi, Narelle. Lovely to see you today.
Oh, it's awesome to have you here. Now, Jeanette is a lawyer, but she works in the business sector. She's the lawyer that can help you with your business to business work, agreements, contracts, everything else. She's the go-to lady for this. So, Jeanette, can you tell us a bit more about yourself and how you got into digital accessibility?
All right, absolutely. Uh, I've been in legal practice for almost 30 years, and back in about 2010, I started working with people doing digital business. So either retail or education and training online, that kind of thing. So when I started working with people in that space, the biggest issues were people didn't understand how the law applied to doing business online.
Mm.
So I went away and put together a list of here are all the things that impact doing business online. And it's not that different to business offline. It's just the environment in which you're doing business. And I think for this reason, because it's not face to face, because you don't open a retail premises store and walk in and have all of the convention that's behind that, people didn't realize that the same laws apply online as they do offline. So one of the things about being in business is we do have anti-discrimination legislation around the country. So when I was back at uni in the 90s, the Discrimination Act in Queensland came out in 1991. So I actually studied it when it was brand new legislation and we were all trying to figure out how it works. And it hasn't changed significantly since then. It's not the oldest anti-discrimination legislation in Australia. There is legislation that was introduced in New South Wales back in the 70s. So we've had legislation in place in Australia for a very long time, which requires people in different circumstances not to discriminate.
Mm-hmm.
And discrimination is on certain bases, and disability is one of those things. So people who have limited sight or limited mobility or limited hearing, they're all the sorts of things that impact doing business online.
Mm-hmm.
So the mobility thing that people don't think about is the ability to use a mouse or a keyboard or either of those. For sight is obvious, although one of the things that really wasn't obvious to me until you did an audit of our website was the contrast in colours. So our logo, we're needing to update because the contrasting colours in our logo is not enough to make it easy for your software to see that or for you to see that as a distinct, the writing on the logo when you look at our website. And that's something that never occurred to me. And that is potentially discrimination. So the basis for discrimination at law is that you can't, there's two types. There's direct and indirect discrimination. So direct discrimination is specifically doing something that impacts an individual because of their disability. Indirect discrimination.
Can you give an example of that?
So, for example, if someone says, no, you can't, I can't let you in our store because we've got uneven surfaces in the store and you don't have appropriate mobility to come into the store, by saying, no, you can't come in and I'm not going to give you an opportunity to have access,
Mm.
that is direct discrimination. So an example of that, there was a case, it was before 2000 in Queensland, and it was action taken against the Brisbane Entertainment and Convention Centre.
Okay.
And that was on the basis of someone in a wheelchair couldn't have access. And or else it was either they couldn't access or their only access was like through a loading dock. And so there was a complaint made, and there was a huge discussion around whether it was reasonable to provide access or not.
Mm.
And the court said, on the basis of the amount of money that it was taking to, that it was costing to build this facility, the
Yeah.
cost of providing appropriate access, so access that didn't make people in wheelchairs feel like second-class citizens,
Yeah.
was not unreasonable.
Okay.
Because it was proportionate to the cost of the whole enterprise. So it wasn't going to be an exorbitant cost. And this is something that impacts businesses. So if the cost of doing something is excessive for your business, then you may not have the requirement to provide that access.
Yeah.
However, as we know, online accessibility is not expensive.
No.
For people to take up that opportunity. So for someone to work with you to get an audit of their website and find out what very simple fixes can be put in place to make their website more accessible, that is not unreasonable.
Okay, cool.
So
what's the
there's a
indirect
proportionality reasonableness thing.
That's interesting. I didn't realize that. So how does the indirect fit in with that?
So the indirect is where you create a situation which makes it harder for one class of people against another. So in this example, if you, for example, have a website, and we were discussing certain telecommunications providers before, if your website is easy for people with sight to use, but difficult for people without sight, it's not accessible, and that's indirect discrimination. You haven't actively gone about setting up the website so it's hard to access for people with limited sight. However, the result is that though people with limited sight are going to have significantly more difficulty accessing the website. So that's indirect discrimination. You haven't done it intentionally. It's just one of those side things that's happened. And the result is there's a group of people who can be identified because of a disability who don't have the same access as somebody who doesn't have their attributes.
So who decides what's reasonable?
So that, well, it really depends. But generally speaking, it's the Human Rights Commission. So complaints go to the Human Rights Commission. Very few matters actually go to trial because for a business, reputationally, it's embarrassing to be taken to court for discrimination. So most of these things resolve at an early stage. And the way the Human Rights Commission works, and there are different ones. So there's the Australian Human Rights Commission, and then there are commissions in each state and territory, depending on which law you're going under.
But Queensland has a commission.
Yeah, it does.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. Okay.
It's not the Human Rights Commission. It is. So generally speaking, depending on what the complaint is about, discrimination is heard by different groups, different tribunals. So in Queensland, if you have for example, an employment, it goes through Fair Work. It's the Fair Work Commission has that jurisdiction. So that's just an example. But if someone makes a complaint to the Human Rights Commission, then there's a conciliation conference. And in the course of that conference, this whole discussion happens about, I can't access such and such. And then the commissioner or the conciliator would normally speak to the respondent and sort of say, well, how hard would it be for you to fix this? And the kinds of complaints are, it's generally related around features on a website. So you've got site, limited site.
Yep.
So
Yep.
you use some software that'll assists you to read what's on website pages and navigate websites.
Yep.
If a website's difficult to navigate or it can't be read, that's an easy fix.
Yeah, it is actually. I agree. It's a simple fix.
Yeah, so in those circumstances, the commissioner or the tribe, whoever the conciliator is, would normally go back to the respondent and say, well, you know, how long and how much cost and how much time is it going to take you to fix this?
Yeah.
And how can you effectively either compensate or accommodate this person in the meantime while you fix that? So a really sort of the most known example of this in Australia was the Sydney Olympic Committee. Their website was not accessible for people with disabilities, and it, due to timing and everything like that, there was no way they could fix it before the Olympics. But that case actually went through to decision because, you know, they said, well, we can't. And in actual fact, in those circumstances, because they hadn't thought about it beforehand. Now, that's 24 years ago.
Oh, it is too, isn't it? Oh my
It's
gosh.
24 years ago. So we have no excuse nowadays.
And it's the same issues still happening. It's 24 years since that. Yeah.
24 years. And the thing is, it's more, people just think, okay, I'm not going to get in trouble for that, but you can be sued. People can lodge a complaint. And even if the complaint gets resolved in an early stage, you go through the time, the cost, the stress of having to deal with that complaint. And even though you might argue that putting money into that is not reasonable, it probably is reasonable, you know. And also, I mean, people don't think about it, but it's probably close to a fifth of the population have some form of accessibility issue. And they have family members who get cranky at sites that, you know, don't make it easy for their family members to access. So there's
services.
That's
so many services don't.
Yeah. So there's an opportunity of assisting and increasing your market by, you know, 15 to 20% by just being accessible. And people don't have to figure it out for themselves. People doing business online can consult with you. You can do an audit of their website. You give them all the advice and can connect them to developers who can fix it. So it's
summarize.
Yeah.
It is discrimination. I know Queensland has a Queensland Discrimination Act 2019. I think it's the latest one, but I could be wrong. Can't remember. Every state has a Discrimination Act.
Yes, they do.
The Australian federal government has the Disability Discrimination Act 1992.
Yes.
And it is illegal to discriminate.
It's not illegal.
Okay.
Okay, so it's contrary to law.
Okay.
So it's a breach of legislation not to be accessible. And what that means is, so the confusion is that when you say something's illegal, people think the police are going to come after them. And generally speaking, that's what happens. But in this case, it's contrary to law in that a person who is impacted can sue you if you breach the legislation. So if you provide a business that's not accessible, someone can complain, and there are avenues and tribunals to which they can complain, and then you have to participate in that process.
And that process would involve time, lawyers, I'm assuming.
Time and cost and stress, because you can't predict the result. This is one of the things, you know, with court proceedings, we always say to people, you've got no better than a 50-50 chance. If you think you've got an unlosable case, I've lost a case we thought we were going to win. I've won a case we thought we were going to lose. You know, these people are involved in this process and they're not predictable. So just assuming that the court is going to solve your problems for you is naive. And the cost and the stress involved in going through those processes shouldn't be underestimated.
And then there's also the branding. reputation issue
There is
because
definitely a
people
reputational
talk.
issue. They do. They
Yeah.
do. People talk and people get on review websites
Oh,
and,
yeah.
they talk to TV programs and
Mhm.
they
Yeah.
do. Oh, sorry, there's our 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And, and they do all sorts of things. And it's much easier to be proactive than it is to be reactive. And this is why we work in the area of
Yeah.
corporate and commercial law, is because we can assist businesses to be proactive
Yeah.
and avoid having to deal with all those sorts of problems down the track.
Yeah.
Or at least if they have those types of problems, then improve systems or processes or documentation
Yeah.
to avoid them again in future. And
Yeah.
that's your space as well. You're in the
Yeah.
preventative space, and
Yeah.
it's all about helping people. And if businesses just looked at it from, you can increase your market by 15
Yeah.
to 20% if you make it easy for
I
people
know.
to have access, and it's not expensive.
It,
So
yeah.
it's just a strategic, plan, part of the
Yeah.
planning process. And for bigger businesses, ESG, you've got to look at environment, society.
Mm.
You've got to look at governance. You've got to look at these things now. It's really important to investors. It's important to purchasers that as businesses we get these things right.
Okay. Wow, I've learnt. I didn't know about direct and indirect. So for a start,
Okay.
at all, well, yeah, because to me it was just, yeah. And of course, I would have said it's illegal, where actually it's a breach of
It's a breach of the legislation,
legislation. Yeah,
and
okay. So it's a
it
different,
makes you, yeah, it exposes you to the risk of being sued.
right. So with all of this, with what you're saying, what are takeaways that you would provide to business and to people like myself? Well,
Mhm.
the standard person on the street, the person with disability, because let's face it, as you said, we're a fifth of the population. We're pretty common.
Yep.
Right.
Well, for a business, I would
Mm.
suggest, well, I mean, you're a resource. I would
Yeah.
suggest they get an audit,
Yeah.
because the audit that you provided to us gave us some really clear, easy guidelines
Hmm.
to improve our accessibility as a business.
Yeah.
Not that we've implemented them all at this
Mhm.
stage, but you know, that framework, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to do it
No.
yourself. You've got the expertise. People can leverage that expertise
Yeah.
and improve their position very, very quickly and
Yeah.
cost effectively. So, from a business perspective, it's that. And I think because more and more people are using online, and because our younger generations are they're activists.
Yeah.
They tell you when they're not happy.
See, that's a good point. That's a really good point.
Yep. So,
Yeah.
knowing that that's your future consumers coming forward, the proactive approach is a good thing because you're
Yep.
preparing your business for the future and this new generation of consumers. Um, for people with disability, be vocal.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to make a complaint. Don't be afraid. However, one one of the things we always suggest with our clients is you take the collaborative approach
Yeah.
first.
Mm.
So the collaborative approach is to approach a business, find the decision maker,
Mhm.
and communicate with the decision maker and say, hey, look, this is my position. I'm a consumer. I'm interested in your products and services. I can't access them.
Yeah.
It's frustrating for me. I would like to spend money with you, but I can't because you're making it hard.
Okay.
Here's how you can make it easier for me. Um, people, firstly, people love to help.
Yes.
So it's a much more open approach.
Hmm.
And secondly, something I read many years ago is when someone's aggressive or makes an unexpected comment to you um, that you react badly to,
Hmm.
you can't actually hear. It physiologically it impacts your ability to take in information.
Mm.
so you react in the fight or flight sort of way.
Yeah.
So the minute someone complains at a business, generally speaking, the business owner is going to act with the fight or flight response and not hear what you're trying to do. But if you approach them and say, hey, look, my concern is this, I know what you're trying to achieve, but it's impacting me and my concern is this, and here's how I can see you could make improvements.
Yeah.
That gets much better traction and people hear it. They can do something with it. They can actually action it. Whereas if when you're aggressive and complaining and everything like that, that's why people get stonewalled and don't get helped and stuff like that. It's just physiologically and psychologically we can't hear because we're too busy defending ourselves.
I'm so pleased you came on today, because it makes sense what you're saying there as well, because that's what anyone does, isn't it, when they feel like they're being attacked?
Yep.
It's a fight or flight. So thank you.
Yep.
Jeanette, how can people find you if they want to find out more about what you do? And I will tell you, we've used Jeanette's legal services and she's wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
I'll just give the extra plug, but seriously.
Excellent. So we are Onyx Legal. Onyx is a stone, a crystal. So it's onyx.legal. That's our website. So we try and make it nice and simple and easy to find us. Yes, I know our website is not totally accessible yet. We are working on it. And we are making small improvements all of the time. So yes, if you'd like to contact us, our website is onyx.legal. And if you want to email us, it's advice, ADVICE, at onyx.legal.
Thanks, Jeanette. Thanks for being on the show. That's
welcome.
Some really good advice. So for anyone out there, it's Jeanette Jifkins at Onyx Legal. You'll find the details at the end of the show. And if you like what we're doing, please like, subscribe, share like crazy. We're actually up to 460 odd listens now. We've only been doing this since January, so we're a wee bit excited. And we've met some amazing people. So have a listen. We've got some more amazing people coming up to tell you about their thoughts on communication and digital accessibility and usability. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.